All right, God is amazing as this chapter is going to conclude that he is going to get the proper respect he deserves. But until then, this chapter, Isaiah 24, is going to be another chapter that discusses the earth. So let's just keep it simple. And even though I'm pretty sure we have used the title, The Earth, before, let's look at it from Isaiah's perspective as we entitle this chapter, The Earth. Primarily because it begins with the earth in the very first verse, and it will end, as we mentioned, with the praise that God will get even beyond the earth. But first, verse 1, behold, the Lord will empty the earth and make it desolate, as he will go on to talk about the way in which he will address the earth in verses 2 through 4, will create a parity that will prevent status from providing any kind of protection whatsoever from the work that he is about to do in judgment on the earth. Verse 5 and 6 going on to talk about the way in which it is going to create a desolation brought on as a consequence for the wrongs done on the earth. Verses 7 through roughly 13, talking about the way in which that desolation will drain joy from the earth, to the point that the wine that once might have produced mirth will now be scarce, and to the degree it is not scarce, it will not bring the same joy that it once might have. Beyond that, though, verses 14 through 16 are going to let us know that not all joy has been removed from the earth, and even though the wine can no longer seem to bring the joy that it once did, there is still going to be a kind of joy that reminds me of Goshen within the land of Egypt during the time God was bringing the children of Israel out of Egyptian captivity under Moses. That Goshen being a place that was not affected by the plagues he used to convince Egypt to let Israel go, reminding me here that much like the Revelation has a period where he waited for his servants to be sealed before going on with some of the drama that was going to come to the earth in the form of judgments during the final day of the Lord. Likewise, here, he's going to seem to have a way in which his servants, or at least a certain segment of society, will still be able to find joy, even in the midst of all that's going on around them. As this chapter will go on in verses 16 through roughly 20 to describe that judgment, or the judgment here in Isaiah, kind of like I remember Amos describing the day of judgment, asking his people, why do you want the day of the Lord? Understanding it's a day of darkness and not light, where you run from one trouble only to find more. There's no escape. And so that is the kind of turmoil that Isaiah seems to be describing here, as he will go on once again to go back to that subject of parity, if I didn't already mention it, in verses 21 and 22. This time a type of parity that will affect both heaven and earth, as verse 21 reads, on that day the Lord will punish the host of heaven in heaven and the kings of the earth on the earth. Verse 22, they will be gathered together as prisoners in a pit. They will be shut up in a prison, and after many days they will be punished. The net effect in verse 23, as we mentioned, bringing glory to God even beyond the earth, as it reads, then the moon will be confounded and the sun ashamed, for the Lord of hosts reigns on Mount Zion and in Jerusalem, and his glory will be before his elders. Understanding that one of the things that caught my attention most was the number of times he mentions the earth, just flat out just mentions it. Verse 1, as we mentioned the earth. Verse 3 starts out with the earth. Likewise, verse 4 starts out talking about what's going to happen on the earth. Verse 5 as well, talking about the earth, as verse 6 is going to have two references to the earth. Verse 13, a reference to the earth. Verse 17, a reference to the earth. You get it. Verse 18, 19, 20, 21, etc. All talking about what he is going to do on the earth. Thus, our title. The thing that I noticed most about the earth from this chapter, quite possibly coming from verse 20, though, that reads, the earth staggers like a drunken man. It sways like a hut. Its transgression lies heavy upon it, and it falls, and will not rise again. That description of the judgment for the earth's transgressions coming, as we mentioned, at the end of a section that describes a judgment that flat out does not seem fair, similar to the way in which Amos describes the day of the Lord as something that you will flee from, or a judgment you might flee from, only to realize that the places that you might hope to flee in order to find refuge just harbor more drama, which actually reminds me of something I heard from a man that I actually respect quite a bit in trying to essentially explain the difficulty between two groups at a place in which we were studying. What he did was explain that flat out, as we've heard from the time we were young, that life is not fair. God willing, not so much in an attempt to justify the wrong that was being done in that situation, as much as he was helping us get our expectations set on the reality of what was going on in that situation. Likewise, Isaiah 24 seems to describe earth during a time in which many might have found joy in the fact that things are unfair, now confronting God, who is giving them consequences that might seem just as unfair.